Namaskar and thank you for joining us on our weekly program, The Economic Brief, the program that looks at key stories from the worlds of business, finance and economy and puts them into an Indian as well as a global context. On the program today, India rises as a global player with export competitiveness across multiple sectors. The Pakistan government is finding it hard to meet IMF targets. We'll look at some reasons why. Overexpansion has taken a toll on the famous coffee house chain Starbucks. And the Spanish floods have caused business damages exceeding 10 billion euros. Now first, let's listen to India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jayant, telling CEOs and business leaders in Sydney in Australia why they should be looking positively at India.
We've done less than 150 days of the third term, but even in this period, we have made we've taken some very big calls. Among the calls which might be of interest to you, one is to set up 12 major industrial zones across India with a view to attracting global manufacturing and promoting domestic manufacturing. Secondly, to double down on the infrastructure spending because the infrastructure investments are still primarily driven by government spending. Three, a big focus on human resources development, on skills.
Well, India has seen a significant rise in exports between 2018 and 2023. So among the sectors which have done well, petroleum, which grew, grew to about $84.96 billion in 2023, with a rise in the market share of about 6%. It was from 6.45% to 12.59%, in fact, doubling. And gemstones is also a sector where India has a significant share of the market of about 36%, which has also grown to $1.52 billion in 2023. Similarly, sugar too has seen a rise to around $3.72 billion. That has a market share of around 12.21% in 2023. Insecticides, fungicides, India has about a tenth of the world market in this sector. And India is also making inroads into the rubber tire market with around 3.31% market share. As well as, interestingly, in semiconductors and photosensitive devices, India's exports were about $1.91 billion. The market share currently is about 1.4%. It may look small, but India is now 9th in the global semiconductor supply chain. It used to be 25th earlier, so that's a climb of 16 places. And we have with us Dr. Sanjay Kathuria, who's an expert on international trade and other aspects of trade. He tracks this. He's with us right now. Dr. Kathuria, tell us, how do you look at, given the rise, especially in semiconductors from 25th to 9th position in the world on semiconductors, what is the potential going forward, do you think, for India?
Yeah, thank you. I think these are very early days in semiconductors. I know there have been some investments and some significant hope. There are, there is a meeting of minds in terms of especially the Quad getting together and trying to channelize certain parts of the supply chain into India. But I would say, at best, I would call this a kind of green shoots. And I think it is, we'll have to wait and watch. Semiconductors, as you know, is an extremely complex business. It is the most complex production structure in that we've known in human history. Right. Okay, so it is to get into, so there is no way that any single country can do all parts of the semiconductor supply chain. Right. But to get into some parts of it, India's got excellent designers globally. A lot of the designers for semiconductors in fact, in the US are of Indian origin. So I think we have significant promise there. And then now I think India is trying to do some part of the fabrication process.
Absolutely.
So I think it's something to wait and watch. But,
Yes.
it's a green shoot, I would call it.
Absolutely. And you see that the US is now hoping, in fact, to increase its export of crude oil in the upcoming Trump presidency. So do you see Indian refiners likely to benefit? India has, grown significantly in the petroleum export segment. India, in fact, is saying that we are the second largest exporter of petroleum in its refined form.
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, the petroleum part is, it depends a lot on the global prices, right? So the dollar value of petroleum can go up and down. Now, there is a projection that petroleum prices will fall significantly because one behemoth, which is basically China's demand globally is projected to decline because of its slowdown. Right, in the future. Right. So I would say, petroleum exports is a great thing to have on the export balance sheet. But remember, it is based on a huge amount of import of crude oil, and then you refine it. So it's a classic, actually value-added, classic supply chain business. So right. it is very good to have, but it is also very volatile. We should remember that because goes up and down with dollar pricing.
We also have Dr. Ajay Sahai, who is the Director General and the CEO of the Federation of Indian Export Organizations, joining us. Dr. Sahai, thanks for being with us. Now, we've seen big growth also in gemstones exports, and India already has a significant share of the market. But how much further, can India expect to grow in this sector?
In fact, if you are looking into gemstone, we have definitely increased our shares significantly. I think the need of the hour is to look into further value-added product instead of exporting gemstone. If that can be studied in the jewelry, that is something good for India, and I think we have the necessary skill to do that. From the gemstone perspective, we are looking into increasing India's share to close to 50%, but we'll be much happy if we can definitely push our value-added segment where we can use the gemstone as a kind of a studied form for jewelry exports.
Right, and what do you see in terms of the new areas that you're talking about? We've seen also that India has grown its market share in rubber tires, for instance, or also in semiconductors, though. I mean, what's the potential like, given the fact that we have moved from 25th to 9th, but we only have 1.4% of the market share right now, but we're hoping to garner more.
I think in some of the regionalized sectors, we are looking into not only increasing export, but also compressing imports. Semiconductor is one of such products because semiconductor imports alone in different form has already touched $40 billion. The projection is that it may touch $100 billion. So in these segments, while we will be creating capacity to look into export, it will help us also to compress our import appetite. And same is true for the rubber tire, pneumatic tires. A lot of global companies have already come to India. The China Plus One policy is definitely helping India. With the coming of Mr. Trump, we expect that some more investment to come into India because in this regime, Mr. Trump will not only be targeting the export from China, but even the products which are manufactured in other countries from the companies which are owned by China may be subject to higher tariff. So we expect that much more growth in these segments of exports. And since we are looking into a $2 trillion of export, probably these will be the driver of exports in future also.
Okay, we leave that. Thank you very much, Dr. Ajay Sahai. Thank you for joining us with those insights. Dr. Kathuria, please stay on with us. We are looking at your comments on our next story as well. Pakistan's central bank governor, Jameel Ahmed, has said that bilateral partner countries, they have assured the International Monetary Fund that they will continue rollovers of their debt for the duration of Islamabad's bailout program. That's about 37 months. Now, the IMF is bringing forward its review of Pakistan's performance after some sources of revenue generation, like, the trade aspect, were non-starters. But The IMF in September had agreed to a $9 billion bailout for the Pakistan economy. Pakistan is currently grappling with severe pollution. In early November, Lahore's air quality reached a staggering AQI of 1,900. That's a whopping 196 times the level recommended by the World Health Organization. But pollution isn't the only thing causing a cloud over Pakistan. The country's economy is struggling too. In an effort to spur growth, the central bank slashed its key policy rate by 250 basis points to 15% on November 4, more than anyone expected. This move is part of a series of cuts since June, totaling 700 basis points over 4 reductions. The State Bank of Pakistan believes this monetary policy stance will help stabilize prices and keep inflation within the 5 to 7% target range. The IMF had approved a $7 billion facility in September to support Pakistan's economy for the next 37 months. This financial boost aims to help the country navigate its economic challenges. In mid-October, Pakistan hosted the SCO summit, where Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif made a fervent appeal to shore up economic stability.
Let us use this opportunity to exchange ideas, share best practices, and forge concrete action plans that will benefit our economies and our societies.
On the sidelines of the SCO summit, China said that it was willing to expand economic and trade cooperation, but added that they believe Pakistan will make every effort to ensure the safety and security of Chinese personnel, institutions and projects in Pakistan. Chinese personnel have been the targets of terror attacks, the most recent being on November 5, when 2 Chinese nationals were shot at and injured in Pakistan's commercial hub of Karachi. India's External Affairs Minister attending the SCO summit also sent a positive signal to Pakistan that could over time benefit the Pakistani economy, with the obvious rider.
I think we've reached a stage where we have an impulse for fresh thinking on the India-Pakistan relationship. The only possible deal breaker is terrorism.
The International Monetary Fund is sending a review team to Pakistan ahead of schedule to check on the country's progress with the USD 7 billion bailout package they agreed on last month. Pakistan is working hard to meet its budget targets and tackle economic challenges. Initially, the IMF staff report set the review date for March 15, 2025 and the end of December 2024 for a performance and continuous criteria review. However, they're moving things up to get an early look at how things are going. The Federal Board of Revenue in Pakistan fell short of its revenue collection target, and provincial governments, notably Punjab, missed their cash surplus goals due to overspending. The Finance Ministry's report highlighted a significant shortfall, $650 million or 53% in the provincial cash surplus target of $1.23 billion USD. The government's efforts to support the FBR goal of collecting PKR 10 billion or about 36 million USD from traders were unsuccessful, missing the target by nearly 99.99%. In a bid to boost the economy, the policy rate cut is expected to help crucial sectors like manufacturing, consumer goods, construction and textiles, all of which are currently operating below optimum capacity. Analysts warn that inflation may rise again in 2025 due to increasing electricity prices and new taxes on the retail, wholesale and farm sectors, set to take effect in January. The Economic Brief, DD India. And Sanjay Kathuria, Senior Fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress, who tracks economic growth in South Asia, among other interests, continues to be with us. Dr. Kathuria, is Pakistan making a serious effort to comply with IMF conditions? Or, are these conditions just unrealistic for Pakistan?
I think Pakistan is certainly making a very serious effort. There is no doubt about it. And the politicians have talked about it being the last program of the IMF, although that is very unlikely. Pakistan has been to the IMF more times, 25 times to be precise, more than any other country that I know of, even more than Argentina. The problem is, I think, as I wrote in a recent piece in Project Syndicate, is I believe there is a fundamental sustainability issue with Pakistan's debt, especially external debt. That is the problem, the
Right.
external debt. Yeah.
So indeed, the Chinese projects too, they are not progressing because of the security issue there. So how much of an impediment do you think terrorism is to the Pakistan economy that prevents investments coming in?
Well, I think there is a security issue certainly for the China-Pakistan economic so-called the CPEC projects.
Yes.
Pakistan's investment rate is about 12% of GDP, right? India and Bangladesh is about 31% of GDP, right? So the investment is very low. Certainly, the security is an issue. But I think they have even more fundamental problems than those in order to really get their economy growing on a sound track. I think they
Yes.
have problems of crony capitalism. There is an elite capture in the way the economy is conducted. There is an undue influence of the army, the Fauji Foundation
Yes.
on economic issues. And I think they don't engage, either the fact that they don't engage with India on the economy
Right.
really hurts the Pakistani economy gravely.
So what do you think? I mean, is there a chance of their engaging with India economically? What's the best way for Pakistan to become creditworthy again? You can see that, they can't stop spending because they need to spend to keep the economy going. And their revenue aspects are just not working. We're not even able to, tax the traders. It was a 100% failure, that attempt to try and raise revenues from there.
So I think they have to, according to me, although obviously the Pakistani officials may not agree, but I think they have to restructure their debt like Sri Lanka did, and to make it more sustainable, to reduce the burden of both external and domestic debt. I know there are issues, but I think it is better to have an orderly debt restructuring than to have a chaotic one, which will cause more hardship to the people and to the economy. That is number one, most fundamental issue. Second is introduce competition in the economy. The third thing is engage with India, because if they do, at full potential, their exports to India can go up by 80%. And of course, India's exports to Pakistan will also increase very significantly. Don't forget that Bangladesh is a top 10 market for India.
Right.
Pakistan, if it grew to its full potential, could become even bigger than that. So I think there is a lot of potential. There is a lot of exciting, possibilities of entrepreneurship. They have, significant product lines, some comparative advantages in a wide range of products, sports goods, medical equipment, certain parts of the auto supply chain, services, freelancing. So there is a lot of stuff going on. There is a lot of possibilities, but I think we have to allow the people to be unleashed, right? Right now, there is too many constraints on proper functioning, and there is an onerous sort of crowding out of economic activity because of the preemption of military expenditure and of interest payments.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjay Katuria, Senior Fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress. Thanks for your insights. Our next story is Starbucks, which over its 5 decades of existence has spread to over 80 countries around the world. But the world's largest coffee house chain is not doing too well because its expansion has been probably a little too big for it. And in India, in fact, the group, which has a tie-up with Tata's, had made a loss of $9 million, around $9 million in 2023-2024. Anu Kaushik has the story.
Starbucks opened its first store in Seattle in the US in 1971. 5 decades later, it boasts of over 35,000 stores across 80 countries, making it the world's largest coffee house chain. Once a favorite of customers, Starbucks is now facing its worst crisis in recent years. Revenues took a massive hit during COVID-19. Post-pandemic, the brand has been struggling to recover. This was evident in its latest quarterly report. The company registered a 7% drop in global comparable store sales. There was a 6% decline in US and North America comparable store sales, while for China, the number stood at 14%. The consolidated net revenues dropped by 3%. Most Starbucks stores are located in US, followed by China. Sales have also plummeted in India, where the coffee chain is operating in alliance with the Tata Group. In 2023-24, Starbucks' loss in the country widened to 82 crore Indian rupees or over $9 million, up from 24 crore Indian rupees or around $2.8 million in 2022-2023. Reasons behind the brand's downfall are aplenty. As the costs of raw materials like milk and sugar rose, Starbucks increased the prices on its menu, leading to a drop in sales. Overexpansion also took a toll on the iconic chain. Close proximity between its cafes resulted in drop in sales per store. Then there's increased competition from cheaper global brands like McDonald's as well as local alternatives. Strikes by its employees' unions disrupted services while highlighting issues like low wages and understaffing. A leadership crisis has made the situation worse. The company has seen 4 different CEOs since 2022. Its new CEO, Brian Niccol, has promised sweeping changes. Many of them are targeted at US consumers. In the US, Starbucks will be bringing back the tradition of writing customers' name on coffee cups. It will also add more comfortable seating, ceramic mugs, and a coffee condiment bar, apart from removing charges on dairy substitutes. The changes have boosted investors' confidence, but Niccol is facing his own set of challenges. He will commute to work in Seattle from his home in California by a private jet. The CEO has also been given a remote office in his hometown. Amid criticism over this decision, the company has ordered employees to work from office 3 days a week. For decades, Starbucks has defined the coffee culture in the US by becoming a place between home and office where people could work and socialize. It later emerged as a global chain. Now the brand is facing an unprecedented crisis due to drop in sales amid rising competition. But its leadership is confident that new strategies will help the company bounce back. With camera persons Sanjeev Kumar and Praveen, this is Anu Kaushik reporting for the Economic Brief DD India.
And we leave you with this story. In a devastating turn of events, eastern Spain is facing one of its most significant natural disasters in decades. Severe flooding wreaks havoc across the region, and with the loss of life already exceeding 200, the economic impact is becoming clearer, with damages to businesses projected to soar above 10 billion euros. Diptanshu Kashyap brings us more, and I'll take your leave. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.
Eastern Spain is reeling from catastrophic floods, with damages to businesses projected to exceed around $10.9 billion. The floods have claimed hundreds of lives, raising urgent concerns about the economic stability of the Valencia region. Bank of Spain officials report that local banks face loan exposure of around $21.82 billion, affecting nearly 23,000 businesses and 472,000 loan holders. In response to the crisis, the Spanish government has allocated approximately $11.6 billion to support flood victims. Among the measures introduced is a mortgage moratorium for 150,000 homeowners, allowing them to pause payments for 3 months and only pay interest for an additional 9 months.
We will provide you with the exact and concrete breakdown this afternoon so that you have these amounts. There are 10.6 billion euros allocated for this first response, marking the initial phase of our immediate response plan focused on the reconstruction and revitalization of the Valencia region.
However, financial experts warn that these measures must be carefully managed to avoid complications in the banking sector. Insurance officials are labeling this flooding event as Spain's most significant climate-related damage claim, surpassing the notorious Bilbao floods of 1983. As assessments continue, experts are urging financial institutions to adapt to the increasing risks posed by climate change, ensuring they are prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for the Economic Brief, DD India.